Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
He was talking about some studies they done at Stanford, and they were like, they had a group of trained individuals, guys, that came in and did pull-ups. And these were newbies, and they did pull-ups, rested 3 minutes, pull-ups, and did 10 sets, so pretty high volume in that sense. And then they had them in and doing only the palms on their hands for 6 weeks, have them in twice a week, and they increased 144% in 6 weeks. And anybody who's done a bit of strength training, that's just that seems like way beyond steroids, and it actually is in terms of performance gains. And I'm like, wow, this sounds really, really interesting.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Timmy Haman, who's been pioneering an absolutely revolutionary fitness protocol called palm cooling. We discussed the concept of palm cooling and its impact on exercise performance. He shared his personal journey and the development of the peak performance bar, highlighting the science behind palm cooling and its practical application in workouts. We also delved into the psychological and cognitive effects of body temperature regulation, offering insights into the future of exercise performance and enhancement. Really enjoyed my interview with Timmy. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I'm Timmy Haman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm very excited to talk to your listeners about this concept of palm cooling, actually.
Yeah, great to have you on, and just started learning about your technology, or the technology that you're bringing to light through through your fitness, the fitness industry. And maybe before we get into all that, what's your backstory, and how did you get into devising this fitness protocol?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I'm as a lot of people, like in my teens, I did a bit of sports, and I'm originally from Sweden, so played a bit of football, or soccer, as you say in the US. And then I ended up playing a bit more handball, which is like a European sport. You could say something, a mix of basketball and an American football. Like, it's pretty physical. It's not like American football or rugby type of thing, but it's very physical. So around the age of 15, they started sending us to the gym, and I like that, get a bit of experience. But then around 19, did national service for a year and kind of stopped doing sports and ended up working on cruise ships for a bit. And at the age of 24, I came back and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was pretty overweight. I was really unhealthy. I'd just been drinking and etc. Living a cruise ship life, basically living in a buffet for a couple of years. And I was just looking at myself and you know what, this gotta change. If I continue living like I have now, this is just not gonna work. So I started working out again, going back to the gym, used the experience I had and did progress, of course, as you do in 24, starting working out again. So did progress. But what can I say? So I started engineering as well. And I like science. And I kept on reading on more things, getting more into the nutrition and, getting more and more knowledge of how to train better and listening to podcasts and those things. And a couple of years ago, I listened to the Huberman Lab podcast, which I'm sure you and some of your listeners are aware of, which for me, that's kind of a detailed guy. It's great 3 hours of just deep down in the weeds of things. And he was talking about something called palm cooling, which basically, if you cool the palms of your hand, you can increase your exercise performance. He was talking about some studies they done at Stanford, and they were they had a group of trained individuals, guys, that came in and did pull-ups. And these were newbies, and they did pull-ups, rested 3 minutes, pull-ups, and did 10 sets, so pretty high volume in that sense. And then they had them in and doing only the palms on their hands for 6 weeks, have them in twice a week, and they increased 144% in 6 weeks. And anybody who's done a bit of strength training, that's just that seems like way beyond steroids, and it actually is in terms of performance gains. And I'm like, wow, this sounds really, really interesting. So I looked up the studies, and I kind of like, he's a little bit full of shit here, if you pardon the language. Like, no, this is really actually what happened. And then he does a second podcast with a Dr. Craig Heller from Stanford as well, who had kind of come up with this. And he said, he was talking about that some of this started kind of like people heard about the palm cooling. So they had former like NFL player that had played for Stanford coming and talking to them about this. And they had one guy in called Greg Clark, who played tight end for San Francisco 49ers. And they asked him like, so what are you good at? And he's like, I'm good at doing dips. So he could chunk out about 40 dips first set and then drop down. So they had him do dips, resting 3 minutes. And after 5 sets, he was like, I'm done. And then he came in 3 days later, and then they did palm cooling on him as well. And the second set, he could do 8 reps more with palm cooling. And he continued to do more reps. So the first time he did 103 in 5 sets in total. Second time, he done 135 in 5 sets. Like that's a 31% increase in a couple of days for an NFL player, which is like obviously peak condition. And even after those phases, like when he'd increased that amount of reps, you'd think he'd be like absolutely exhausted. No, he could continue and did 4 more sets. He in total increased his workload by like 80% the first time he did this. Then they had him in 5. Yep.
Timmy, just so people understand, I know it might sound very intuitive, but palm cooling, is that simply just, maybe explain
sure.
that a little bit.
So, it is basically cooling the palms of your hands between sets.
Okay. So
good shout to kind of like, I'll probably get to that at some point, but
Yes.
It is just, they built a fairly advanced mechanism to kind of like cool the palms of their hands at a specific temperature around 15 degrees Celsius, 45, 50 Fahrenheit, because that's the kind of optimal temperature for this. But that's the part of it. And after 5 weeks, he had increased the total workload by 201%. And that's an NFL player. And I'm like, like you listen to this and you're like, you hear a lot of things and are like sometimes, you can do this and you can improve a little bit here, a little bit there. And most of the time, like as a recreation athlete, like myself, like I'm like, well, I'm not going to jump through hoops to gain 3% in a year. Like that's not what I'm not going to do anything. But this stuff, It was big enough. So I was like, I somehow got to try this. You know what I mean? Like it was too big of a gain to just like check my head at and not even try it. So what I did was basically to kind of try to replicate as much as possible what they were doing. They have a product that's like for one hand, $1,500, both hands, $3,000. And I was like, I wanted to try this, but not that much. So instead I did a bit of a DIY solution, sat down in the gym, had a bucket of water and some ice to keep the right temperature and a rod out of it. So I sat down between my sets, put my hands in water to cool them down and did a couple of different exercises. And as a 40-year-old with 15 years of experience in the gym, the best I did was 48% increase in 5 weeks. Like better than newbie gains. Like super fascinated by how well it kind of worked for me.
Wow. It's interesting because I've not done this directly. Like I have a cold plunge. And there was a time I haven't done it lately, but I would go in it, come out for a bit, and then do a workout. And I actually found that my stamina, because your body takes longer to heat up, and I'm sure that's the same type of technology or the same idea with the palm cooling. Obviously, a little bit easier to do that at the gym than jump in a bath of cold water. But is that the same type of thought process behind the palm cooling?
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. So kind of like if we go a little bit, take a step back and why this kind of works is that, so our body is, you can say, a little bit of an ineffective machine. So when we work out, the energy or like we just use 20% of the energy in our muscles for actually movement. 80% goes lost in heat, which is why we kind of like, we work out, we start heating up and get warm. And that's because when our muscles contract, 80% of it is just heat loss. But we are also a mammal, which means that we live at a kind of pretty set body temperature. And, you know, like we have about 98.5 Fahrenheit, 36.5 Celsius normal body temperature. But like if that goes up a little bit, it's dangerous pretty quickly. Like it's a very narrow spectrum we have to live with there. And because of this, our body and evolution is like so clever. So it has put in a lot of defense mechanisms to make sure that we don't overheat. Because I was saying, like, if you go to 106, 107 degrees, pretty quickly, like, you're in hospital, like, because it's really dangerous. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, the body has, put in protection mechanisms. And a part of that is in our muscles, there is an enzyme called pyruvate kinase that helps producing the ATP. And this enzyme is heat sensitive. So as soon as your body temperature goes up a little bit, the energy production goes down. Because if you can continue push yourself when you're heating up, you can drive yourself to overheating, and you can both locally cook your muscle and overheat your entire body. So that kind of works as a counter mechanism. As soon as your body start heating up, the energy production goes the other way. And when it reaches a certain point, like a muscle reach 39, 40 degrees Celsius, the energy production almost gets completely shut off. So, and like what can you say? Like, so in a lot of cases, actually what doesn't happen is the muscle doesn't fatigue, it overheats and the energy production is shut off. That's what often happens. But we think we've reached failure or something like that, but it isn't actually the muscle fatiguing, it's just overheating. And
so we're thinking we've hit fatigue, but really you might have, but you might not. You might just, your body's just sort of going to taper off, you know, because it thinks it's because it's overheating more so, and it's more of a protective mechanism. So when you cool the palms, is that the most efficient way to cool yourself, through your palms?
Yes, it is. And I was going to say one more thing on that. I get to the palm in a second. And it's also what is even more kind of clever with this, in my view, is that it even affects how we feel mentally. So when we heat up, we feel more fatigued. If you think about it, like if you're in a warm country, you're like lying by the beach. Most of the time, like you just like, you don't feel like doing anything, because your body knows that if you're going to run a marathon now, you're going to overheat really quickly. But if you jump in a pool, all the sensors of the body feels that like, oh, we're not afraid of overheating anymore. And you get instant energy. And that's just like how the body is like I find it fantastic, because it's so clever. It just really tells us to like, no, don't go and push yourself too hard, because that's dangerous. So it affects both your physical performance and your mental performance. And really, you asked about the palms there. And yes, there is basically 3 areas on our body which have glabrous skin. And that means that there is no hair follicles. And those are palms of our hand, bottom of our feet, and above the beard line in the face. And then the same for females, even though they don't have beard. But all the rest of our body has hair follicles, even though we're not maybe as hairy as monkeys, etc. These areas have a tighter blood vessels called avas. Not only are they tighter, so they transport heat better, when they go to our heart, they don't go through thin capillaries, which is kind of like stopping the blood up. And it's like pushing something through a tight tube. They go through the veins all the way, which means they're basically going on the highway instead to our heart. So these 3 areas are the most effective. And naturally, why they do the palms in kind of test, and why I'm also doing palms, is that it's by far the most practical way. Like you have shoes on when you work out, and having something kind of in your forehead is going to be destructive. But you could do it with the palms or bottom of your feet and your forehead as well. So it's like, that's the mechanism in it. And so when they do the palm cooling, they systematically cool down the body and the muscles so you can perform better.
Really, really neat. Neat and simple. Like, there's so much out there now, with so much complexity and expensive, like protocols for trying to gain muscle or get an edge in the weight room. But I definitely can see this because, like I said, when I would do those plunges, I felt like I could work out harder and like longer than I could just under normal conditions. And I also too, like, I agree, like when you're in even with dogs, you see this, like if it gets hot outside, I mean, you go for walks and that's enough for them. Yeah. Whereas if it's, not fairly cool out, they can play all day, so it's not just obviously for people as well, but dogs and animals.
Yeah, no, but it's actually, this works in everything. So like our mitochondria across the body is heat sensitive, which means that, like, they've done tests with this, that if you're really warm, if you heat up too much, like, your cognitive performance goes down as well, because it doesn't click properly in the brain and the energy isn't produced properly. It has like huge impacts in that sense. And as I said, it kind of like, it impacts how you feel as well. And if you do cardio exercises or kind of endurance things, it really brings your heart rate down as well. I actually kind of hot off the press, I shared our palm cooling device with a guy at the gym who does, like, because I don't do a lot of cardio, I'm doing mostly lifting, and he'd been running on the treadmill and he saw his heart rate go up. And then he just put his hand on it and his heart rate dropped. It went from 175 to 155 in a minute. And then he let it off and then it goes up. So it seems to kind of, this is my own analytical brain trying to figure out exactly how it works from an endurance perspective. But what I think is that because the body gets automatically cooled down, it doesn't need to pump as much blood through to cool yourself down. And therefore, the heart rate kind of goes down, so you can run for further and faster with the same heart rate. And
when did you? I noticed you developed this like peak performance bar, which is like simply just a bar, and there's how did you come up with designing that, and when did you come out with that?
Yeah, so as I said, like the first thing I did myself was like sitting there with my hands in a bucket of water, and I did really great gains, but to be frank, carrying that one between sets around the gym and everything, like, it was just like, this was fantastic, but it was so unpractical. So I kind of like, I can't continue doing this. Like, it was a fun test for 5-6 weeks, but after that I was like, this is not a practical implication. So
right.
I was like, I put that to the side, and then I started using, like, I have called them
like an ice stick, or like
more like an ice, what do you call it? Ice block. But that's too cold, because also when you do this, it should be about, as I said, 15 degrees Celsius, 45, 50 Fahrenheit, because if it's too cold, you get vasoconstriction. A fancy word of saying that the blood vessels close, and then it kind of becomes counterproductive, because you have less blood flow in the palms of your hands than you would normally have. So you need to have the right kind of temperature. But obviously with an ice block, it would be too cold. So I had like a towel in between and to make it kind of work. And I'm in my 40s and I started lifting better than I ever have. I did doing PBs in certain things when injuries didn't really stop me. But I then also, kind of engineering thinking, realized that from a heat transferability perspective, the towels and anything like that isn't a effective way of doing it. Like, a metal transfers heat much better, water transfers heat much better. So a lot of different things tried with different materials and like testing in and out of the gym. How does this feel? How do I feel? How much do I heat up? And like tons of different things, and calculating how much because it also needs to stay cool for your entire workout. If you have something like, it's great to have something that cool for 10, 15 minutes, but if it's not cool half an hour into your workout, it just doesn't really compute. So yeah, used a lot of my engineering thinking and stuff to get to the product we have today.
And I was just going to say, how long do you keep it on the palms, and then do you just do this in between your sets?
Yeah, so really, like if we talk, I would use it as often as I can between sets. If you think about it, like it impacts everything, and as you were saying, like you can do a cold plunge before, and that brings down your core body temperature, and then you can go for longer because the fatigue curve is directly correlated to your heating up thing. So what you kind of want to do, if you generalize all the protocols and stuff, is that you want to keep as cool as possible throughout your workout. Obviously, if you want to do an intense workout, you should do an intense workout, but like applying cooling and avoiding heating up, such as wearing super warm clothing, like when you're at the gym. Like now when I have this, I'm going into the gym sometimes and I see people having like 3 layers of clothing, and I'm like, hey, that is really impacting your performance because you're going to heat up and it's just you're not going to recover as fast. So I use it as like kind of often as I can between sets, between exercises, and and always thinking about trying to be as cool as possible, like to ensure that my body doesn't heat up more than necessary, because that has a negative impact on the performance in whatever you're doing.
Very cool. And then you developed the peak performance bar. When did that come out?
Yeah, so I launched it like a couple of weeks ago. Just a couple of weeks ago. So very excited of seeing like how it can help people out there. Because as I said, looking at the studies and what I feel myself, like I'm in my 40s and I'm doing PBs. It wasn't really what I was expecting, but that's the results you can get from this. And it's a very interesting and concept that I think is going to an extent, revolutionize the exercise world. I think it might be, or I think it will be, everybody thinks about sleep and things like that are super important for our performance and cognitive health and all those things. I think in 10 years' time, we're going to look at body temperature in the same way as a key component for our physical performance, and potentially mental as well.
Yeah, and when I think about body temperature as well, and I'm sure maybe the bar is not necessary for this, but like sleeping at the right temperature.
So that
super
is
important.
That's a very interesting application, because like I know people using these type of things before going to sleep, especially if you had an evening workout. Like I know myself, like if I had an evening workout, like I'm warmer, you're upbeat to an extent that, and it's kind of hard to fall asleep. And what I do then is that I take the bar, load it with the ice sticks that makes it colder, and I just hold it before I go, or like on my way to bed, and lie with it in bed to get my body temperature down to the level we know is better for falling asleep. So it kind of, works very well for that.
Yeah, I just ordered. I haven't gotten it yet. I'm sort of looking forward to it. I don't know if you've heard of like the 8-pod. Or they make like a sleep cover / mattress where it actually cools for while you're actually sleeping to keep your body temperature at the right amount throughout the night. But again, that's if you want to spend a decent amount, it's not cheap. But yeah, something like this, especially if you, like you said, you work out before bed and you want a way to sort of cool down, get the body temperature. Because I know for me, if my body temperature is too hot at night, I need to do something. And sometimes splashing water doesn't necessarily work.
No, but it's an interesting thing, because like I like some of the, so when we look at the kind of surfaces we're talking about here, palms of our hands, the bottom of our feet and stuff, there is things that we do instinctively that we kind of tells us that how this works. Like, so if you would lie and you're a little bit too hot under your duvet, what a lot of people do is that the feet come out, because the bottom of their feet is, and they keep their palms outside of the duvet, and that kind of cools you down. And it's because of these glamorous skin surfaces that help you cool down more.
No, I totally believe in that. And how much research? I know you're sort of a researcher at heart. It sounds like did you do a lot of research and obviously self-experimentation before designing the bar?
Yes, I mean I've read. A little bit surprisingly, there isn't that many research reports on this. There is the guys, Craig Heller's lab from Stanford, that have done a couple of them, and they're like 10, 15 years old, some of those studies. Mm-hmm. So I've read all those ones back, forth, and up and down. And then, I think I spent the last year and a half, 2 years doing different type of, the first test I did was about 2.5 years ago. And then between now and then, I've done continuous, just like trying out, see what works best. And like, from my perspective, first I just wanted to improve for myself, and then I have this entrepreneurial heart in me where I'm like, you know what, this is like, I got to do something with this. I think it can really help people, and I couldn't really help myself of trying to create a product that I think can really help people.
Yeah, and I think getting this into like almost like universities or high schools for them to have in their weight room would be a good avenue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously, we're selling them to whoever is interested. Like it could be individuals and gyms and PTs, etc.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'm definitely want to check it out for sure. Is there anything else you want to discuss around the palm cooling in your performance bar?
So, like maybe just more for people to kind of like see how they can sometimes, like, as I said, and we have things we do. Like if you are cold, you come outside and it's cold outside. What we do often would be to rub our hands together. This is an evolutionary thing where, we've seen this in our ancestors, and we've kind of learned that this is a very effective way of heating ourselves up. And this is all due to these surfaces, and it works kind of the other way around as well, with both heating up and cooling down. It's in the same way as kind of if you walk up to a fire and you're cold, you would put your hands to it, feel the heat on your the palms of your hands, and that would heat you up. And like there is a couple of things there that I think people can kind of think of. How would you do that? But that would work for cooling down as well. And really, outside of the just palm cooling part, as I was talking about before, think about how you can try to keep cool and not heat up too much when you're exercising. Like think about what you're wearing, and like don't wear large pump covers if you go out running or something like that. Like don't wear too much clothing. It's gonna actually have a very negative impact on how you can perform and how you feel while you work out. So I think that's it's really an important part. And as I said, I really think this is going to change how people think about workouts. In 10 years' time, it's going to be like natural to just make sure that you don't heat up too much in the same way as we think about sleep and nutrition today.
Well, and you also mentioned, like, I know that like Olympic pools, they want to keep at a certain temperature because if it gets a little too warm, doing competitive swimming is not going to, the swimmers will not be so happy with that.
No, okay. I didn't know anything about that actually. But I can see that because obviously you kind of mentioned with the palm cooling that like you dump heat. It's your body to get rid of heat. And if the pool gets too warm, it's going to kind of heat up the swimmers. Knowing what we know now, that's going to really have a negative impact on the performance. Muscles are the energy production in the muscles is going to shut off earlier, and they're going to feel more fatigued. So I can see that really, really having a negative impact. They probably should have a fairly cold pool for best performance.
For sure. Well, this is a cool concept. When this was brought to my desk, I was like, this is cool. I said, I feel like I've experienced this before. Like I told you with the plunging, just never really looked too much into it. But yeah, the peak performance bar, I think it's definitely something worth looking into. And I'll put a link. Yeah, there it is. I'll put a link in the show notes. Did you want to? Were you able to offer maybe like a short discount for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So if they use your link, they're going to get so we're a UK company, so we're charging pounds, but they get a £30 discount. It's about 45, but yeah, just under $40 discount if they use the link in yours, and I can sort out that link for you later.
Okay. Yeah, you'll give me that link, and then I'll put that in the show notes, and then the listeners can get a discount and check it out, because you just designed it. What just came out a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so. Exactly. It just came out a couple of weeks ago, and I really think it's going to do great things for people and really help people work out harder and reach better results than they ever have, regardless of age.
Well, especially as we get older, we're always looking for a little bit of an edge.
Exactly. That's why I keep on kind of mentioning that in my 40s, I'm hitting PBs. Didn't think that was going to happen.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely interested. That's something I'm always looking to do, and I'm in my 40s too. So, well, this was great, Timmy. I appreciate you coming on and sharing this, and we'll put a link in the show notes. Is that the best place for people to find the Prime Science?
I either go through the link in the show notes, or like if you Google Prime Science, we're going to come up. If you also Peak Performance Bar, you can find it there. And if you want to follow us on socials, it's Prime Science Health. Mainly on Instagram at this point in time, but when we expand that to other ones, it will be the same handle. And if you want to know anything about this, hit us up, send us an email, ask a question. Like I'm very interested in this subject, so very happy to have conversations with anybody who kind of like want to know more, or like if there was something here in this podcast that wasn't really clear. I'm sure there is people that have questions, but yeah. So just hit us up. Like I'm super psyched to talk about this, and can go on for hours if I.
Sounds great, Timmy. Well, thanks so much. We'll put a link in the show notes for everybody to get a discount. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing the knowledge about palm cooling.
Yeah, brilliant, man. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.